All right, welcome guys to the Coin Vigilante podcast. Today I'm pleased to have Wes Levitt, who is the head of strategy at THETA Labs. Now, THETA is, a network whose purpose is to build, a decentralized way to provide video streaming and all that. So without further ado, Wes Levitt, thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, Carlos. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, I've been hearing about THETA a lot, especially from my mother. She's the one that's all in on this. And so, I kind of wanted to bring you on the show so you can explain a little bit about THETA. But before we go into that, can you just give us a background of, work experience, how you got into THETA, and basically how you got to the point where you are?
Yeah, sure. So my work experience, at least originally coming out of school, I was working in commercial banking and then in real estate finance for a number of years. Worked at a mortgage REIT here in the Bay Area called Redwood Trust, and then moved on to the private equity side from called Monster Capital. I started business school over Berkeley around 2015, and had been dabbling in crypto for on and off for many years, like a lot of us had. But around 2016, 2017, started getting much further down the rabbit hole, as the cliche goes. And of course, being at Berkeley, where there's a huge crypto scene, both blockchain at Berkeley and also with Don Song and several other great professors, really diving deep on crypto at the time, really started looking at it as something I wanted to get into full time. And so decided to make that change as I was transitioning out of business school. And just by happenstance, got introduced to THETA Labs just as they were kind of jelly around the idea of launching THETA. Around that time, it was still just an idea in our CEO and CTO's head, working with Duffy Wan, who was leading an investment at the time. And it was sort of perfect timing as I was looking to go into the blockchain space full time. They were looking for someone with more business experience to help launch the project. And so I joined THETA team full time and it was about late 2017, started work with them. And then we actually went live in January of 2018. So my current role there, I'm head of strategy. That covers a lot of things from a lot of our business operations to marketing and communications to a little bit just whatever the day demands. At a startup, we all wear a lot of hats, and it's sort of learning on the fly who needs to do what. And as the projects continue to evolve over the years, we've evolved with it.
So, you're talking about 2017, 2018, time frame when you first got into all this crypto thing. When was the first time you heard about Bitcoin, and what captivated you to join the crypto space?
Yeah, so I think my story is probably similar to a lot of folks that I had played around with it on the internet and actually bought and traded or not even traded, just bought and used a few Bitcoin back in 2012, 2013. Since a little money around, thought it was a really neat kind of strange little part of the internet, but definitely didn't see the vision for what it could become at the time. It's very nascent. It was difficult to even get Bitcoins. But still, it was cool to familiarize myself with it, kind of put it in the back of my mind, and didn't think about it for several years until later when Ethereum started becoming more common. I wasn't in Ethereum in 2014 when it launched, but around 2016 time, starting to learn more about smart contracts and what they were doing there. I bought a significant amount of Ethereum and traded it at a big profit, but this was all in double-digit Ethereum prices. So thought I was real clever at the time, but obviously, right. This is why holding is always better in crypto.
Yes.
And then it was like I said, it was around kind of 2016, 2017 time. One, because just crypto was getting more institutional adoption and interest. So it started to feel like this is more, has legs for the long term, but also being on campus at Berkeley and seeing a lot of the computer science professors be passionate about blockchain. That kind of flipped the switch for me to realize this isn't just some oddity on the internet being toyed with. There's really serious people from all fields. It really drove home when I've got a computer science professor that's talking about it and lecturing about it. And then I was taking a hedge fund strategies class at the same time. And that professor is lecturing about crypto and all the future he sees in it. And you knew there was something there when you had all this interdisciplinary interest in it. from, very
Right.
respected professors at a great university. So really clicked for me that this is not a curiosity anymore. This is something that's going to be changing a lot of how we do work in business.
And that's funny, how you speak, that was like kind of like your aha moment. Okay, this is kind of like a real thing. For the past 3 years, I've been telling people, hey, look, this new thing is coming. The infrastructure is getting built around Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Get in now, right? Test the waters, buy something. And, now all of a sudden, no one listened to me, no one bought. And now all of a sudden that Bitcoin's at 60,000, all these tokens are going crazy. All these people are just knocking at my door asking, hey, so what's going on? How do I get in? Should I buy? Am I too late? I'm like, come on. And, it only took Elon Musk to be the one to convince the rest of the world, even though we've been telling the world. But okay, leaving that aside. So we got Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is the store of value. Ethereum is basically a power machine that allows decentralized applications to grow, right? Bringing the finance side into the crypto industry or ecosystem. What is THETA? What does THETA do?
Yeah, so to continue along those lines, I think the easiest way to kind of high level describe it is more broadly than crypto in general, networking and data distribution is moving closer and closer to the edge. This is a trend that's been happening for a while now. It's aided by faster internet speeds, now 5G, and also devices on the edge, your mobile device being a lot more powerful than it used to be. And so just in general, you're seeing a shift from the centralized model to more of an edge network, which means literally devices on the edge. So more processing power and more of the actual delivery is done on the edge of it. That's a broad trend that's happening even outside of the world of crypto. We fully believe it and put our money where our mouth is with our own video platform and using an edge network like this. And going along with that, you're going to need a way for all these devices, numbering in the billions now, to transact with each other. Because if you have an edge network where there's value in this data being pushed from device to device, my phone to your phone, there has to be a simple way for there to be a financial transaction there as well. Even if we're talking about a micropayment that's a hundredth of a penny, but in the same way they need to communicate with each other directly, device to device, they need a way to transact with each other. We see THETA as really the layer that's going to enable that. Really, any crypto could do that, but there's various reasons why other cryptocurrencies wouldn't work. If it's slow transaction speeds, or just you can't fit as many transactions per second as you need, or just more generally speaking, they're not suited specifically to this case of millions and millions of edge devices. THETA is purpose built for this use case.
So, look, again, I'm not tech savvy with this. What actually is the edge network? Like, if you were to explain it to literally a person walking down the street, what even is that?
Yeah. The best way to think about it is, I'll use a video example since that's what we're most familiar with. But if 100 of us are sitting in the same city and watching the same video stream, in the most traditional, earliest model, that video is located somewhere in the world on some server. And all 100 of us are going to send a request to get that video. And then it's going to be sent 100 times to each of our devices. Think of it as just one single pathway, and it hops from different points on the network until it gets to your phone that you're watching on, or your computer. The trend is away from that and for more video and really more data in general to be stored closer to the edge. And think of edge as basically the end user, your device. Your phone or your computer is the network, is the devices on the edge. More of the work and more of the data is being stored and used closer to the edge, as opposed to many network hops back on some centralized server halfway across the world. So when we're talking about creating an edge network, it means more like more and more of this communications and the data is happening between the end user devices, and not and if I send a message to you or I'm transferring data, it'll go peer-to-peer, end device to end device, instead of all the way back to a central server and all the way back to the other person's device. Okay,
so essentially what's happening is, instead of going through a central pathway or a one lane type of street, we can go peer-to-peer by whether is it transactions or is it just content? Like, are we just, is it basically streaming content? Because look, I've been hearing, whenever I think of THETA, the way I see it is, I mean, you're basically, in my eyes, you're getting rid of the middleman, and you're basically, I don't know if it's showing content or allowing basically any person to share content without having to go through a middleman. Is that part of it?
Yeah, and there's a few different implementations. We can go into a little more detail on it, but the specifics of it depend on how you're using it. It can be used both just so that you and I are watching the same video platform. Maybe we still get the feed at or see, have the same user interface where it's a YouTube or something, and we're seeing the same site, but on the back end, you and I are sharing the video segments between each other, peer-to-peer. Okay. But we also have released another alternative that's sort of the fully decentralized version of that, our THETA actual Edge node app, where that's completely peer-to-peer. It's, if I'm showing a video stream and you want to watch it, it will just bounce between THETA peers and go to you. There is no central server. There's no website even necessarily. It's truly peer-to-peer.
So why is that? A lot of people might not understand this in my audience. Why is that such a big deal? Look, and clearly we have big companies that are kind of seeing this, because, if you see, and if you have seen the news about THETA, I think there's a partnership between Google, there's a partnership with Samsung, now Sony, you have MGM, you have Lionsgate. So, clearly they're noticing something important with THETA, and I don't know if it's a partnership or if they're invested, but they're understanding. So why is it such a big deal, to be able to do this? I mean, like you said, you have that THETA Edge network now where you're literally showing, content peer-to-peer. I mean, why is it a big deal? Why are the big companies noticing this?
Yeah, it's kind of case by case. I think depending on where they sit and what their priorities are, it's attractive to them for different reasons. Sony and Samsung specifically are investors in both the company and the tokens of THETA. And for a large company like that has a lot of data content being pushed, or maybe has their own video platforms, for them, a lot of it's efficiency. Because if they are seeing, if they are spending tens of millions or more on CDN costs, basically the content delivery networks being how you actually get those videos from the server to you. For them, it's the efficiency of saying, if this can happen near the edge on a peer-to-peer network, that's just hugely more efficient than redundantly sending the same content over and over many times, especially if it's something like a live stream, which is where THETA TV got its start in. Think about like a football game you're watching, and there's a huge concentration of users in a specific region because they're all fans of the team and they're all watching at the same time. You have all the network characteristics that are great for peer-to-peer. You have the same data that if I'm watching this stream, there's probably 1,000 other people in the same city that want that same stream. We can all just share it peer-to-peer instead of having to pull up many different times. That's something that's interesting to a Samsung, in just that it's a better way for them to do what they're already doing, in that they move a lot of data as part of their operations. Now, there's a whole nother side of it, and probably because we're in the crypto space, this is a lot more important to other folks, but there's a different motivation for having peer-to-peer video data delivery for some folks that are streamers that are being demonetized or being banned from platforms, or just in general are concerned about censorship. It's not really about efficiency or saving money to them. It's really just about knowing that I can stream to these users regardless of the case, that I'm not, going to be banned or demonetized because someone doesn't like my content or something like that. So that's part of the reason why we have sort of different implementations, almost like a suite of different products that you can, and different levels that you can go into this to centralize, because we realize that there's a lot of folks interested in this, but for sometimes very different reasons. And the reason why Samsung is interested in THETA Network is totally different than the reason some content creator that's been kicked off YouTube is.
Okay. See, that's interesting because, normally, like, for example, I'm a big Bitcoin guy and big Litecoin guy. Litecoin is method of payment to me. Bitcoin is store of value to me. So, in a way, to me, they kind of serve a purpose that is well defined. See, and so I'm not used to actually digging into a project where, whoa, I mean, there's a bunch of use cases, right? And just like you said, different people find a different usage for the network that you guys are providing, which is, I think huge in my way and my understanding. So, I think that's big. Now, so for example, we talk about these partnerships. Google, I mean, Samsung. Let's go back to Samsung. So I read an article, and I'm not sure. Are they going to actually put THETA into an application? Like they're going to put a THETA app already pre-integrated into Samsung phones to where, when you buy a Samsung phone, you'll be able to just open the THETA app, or what's that about? I don't know if I've been reading a wrong article. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's actually it's an app that we are working on for their Samsung Daily app on their phone. That THETA TV would be preloaded in that. Unfortunately, the Samsung Daily app as a whole, they phased that out and are reorganizing. But so now we're trying to repurpose that basically to what will potentially replace Samsung Daily. I can't go into too much of that because Samsung hasn't gone too much into what they're going to use to replace Samsung Daily. But yeah, the idea was that they're -1 screen. If you like on your phone, what happens when you scroll left instead of right, and it's a news feed or something. Samsung's been working around a way for a couple different iterations to try to make that more engaging video type content. And so that's where THETA TV is a great fit for that. Is whatever incarnation that ends up coming out in eventually, is that instead of just having a news feed when you scroll left on your phone, it's engaging video content right then, and it'll just be popped right onto any Samsung phone.
Cool. And so, you mentioned as well. So let's say there's a YouTube content creator, just like me, right? I have my YouTube content, at any point, YouTube could say, we don't like your content, see you later. And so essentially you're saying THETA is providing basically the opportunity for those people whose content has been blocked to be able to go there. Now, one thing though, in a way that kind of raises some concerns, also opportunities, but concerns, because, well, what if someone is displaying either violent content or, just things that are illegal? I mean, to what extent to what extent does can THETA even block it, or it's just out there?
Yeah, it depends again on what implementation. If it's on THETA TV, the site we host, we're the YouTube in that example. So we do moderate content. We're a US based company. We have to follow all the laws. And if there's illegal content on the site, we have to remove it. If you're just using THETA peer-to-peer software though, no, there's no way for us to block what's on it. But it's not just that. We don't have any way of seeing what's on it. It's just software that allows effectively to users to connect, and you can stream what you want to another user, but it never goes through a server we own. We couldn't tell you what that content is if you wanted to. So it's more like
it's essentially fully decentralized.
Yeah. I mean, we can't control it in the same way that, we have no way of policing what you say to someone if you call them on the phone and start talking to them. Like we don't, we're just a conduit, or we aren't anything really. It's just a piece of software that allows two people to connect, or more people to connect. So it is. You're not wrong to raise that concern. It is something I think, while it's not a legal perspective for it, and that there's nothing, software is free speech, and we're not responsible for what someone does with that from a legal stance. I do think it raises an important question in general about, we tend to be very gung-ho about decentralization in the crypto space, and certainly there's a lot of benefits compared to where we are today, where decentralization could make this could improve our lives. But we do have to think through these questions about when are the cases where decentralization is going to cause harm potentially.
And so, does it not cause concern in terms of a regulatory standpoint? A lot of people, especially the old folks in our Congress, don't have any clue what's going on. And so is that going to be like, oh my gosh, same thing with Bitcoin. You remember initially people were like, well, people are using it for fraudulent activity. People are like terrorists are sending transactions with Bitcoin and Litecoin. Is it that same thing to where like, look, it's just like anything else in the world. You can either use it for good or bad. That doesn't mean we need to, I have a car. There is risk with driving a car. and potentially getting into an accident. Just because there's a car and I can use it to run someone over doesn't mean we ban cars. Is that kind of like how you guys are going with this?
Yeah, I think so. And we're not out of the woods on that yet. You may have saw Janet Yellen just made some comments about her concerns over Bitcoin being used for money laundering purposes. Now, I'm still hopeful that doesn't mean she's going to be a zealot against Bitcoin. And I think it's a little silly when, if you look at the dollar values, US dollar is used to launder a lot more than Bitcoin, certainly. Yeah. But that attitude is still there. There is somewhat of a precedent in that with the peer-to-peer services like a BitTorrent, BitTorrent's been used to pirate a lot of content over the years, but it seems like there's a legal precedent that creating software that allows people to transfer files between each other, just software in and of itself, at least for now, seems to be, that right seems to be protected, at least in the US. I can't speak for for every country in the world. Now, if you're running the Pirate Bay and you're hosting a site which points all the users where to get the illegal content, that's treated very differently, and that's why they have to be hosted, on some renegade island off the coast of Scandinavia, if I recall correctly. But BitTorrent's a software company that I don't know what happened since Trump bought them, but they're for years have just been down the street from me in San Francisco. It's a software development company, and it's not illegal for them to make that software. So I think the treatment, that's how we view THETA as well. It's the same precedent, and we're just creating basically the software to connect people.
Okay, gotcha. So could you, I don't know, do you have any background or any understanding? Like, is there any way you could walk me through kind of like the evolution of the web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0? I think in my eyes, it kind of fits with kind of like what THETA's trying to do. Walk me through and kind of explain a little bit and see how it connects with THETA.
Yeah. I'll do my best, because Web 3.0 is sort of become such a broad concept that it pulls in a whole lot of things. But the easiest way you can think of the Web 1, 2, 3 evolution in ways that are kind of tangible to us as consumers is Web 1 is when we were just going on websites and in the mid to late 90s, where you go to a company's website and it's static, it's just got some information on it. Maybe you could buy something and there's a checkout page, but it's very one direction. Web 2, broadly speaking, there's obviously technical aspects to it that are considered Web 2 as well, but from our consumer perspective, it was sort of the revolution of social media, where we aren't just going and getting information off, we're actually creating content as well. And there's interactivity between all the people on the web to create, communities on social media and things like that. Web 3, I've heard it defined as basically like the intersection of a lot of new enabling technologies, whether it's AI for data processing or blockchain for payments, and many other things. But I think with respect to THETA and crypto in general, a lot of what it is a backlash against the excesses of Web 2.0, where we got all these great things that from like social media and ability to connect in ways we couldn't have thought possible, but it all accrued to, mostly 5 companies, and now they own all your data, and basically don't have a whole lot of rights as a consumer. Web 3 is kind of moving away from that, where more of it gets pulled back to the individual user, where you're going to control your own data and your own finances as it pertains to the internet. And I think that dovetails nicely with what we're talking about, where more is brought to the edge and to the end user devices, because you won't be so reliant on Google or Facebook or a few major companies for how you interact on the web. That's not to say that this is going to kill these companies. It's going to work with them, but just the ownership of your digital identity and who you are online will be pulled more back to yourself, as expressed through your device, instead of everything running through your identity, which lives on a Facebook server.
See, that's crazy. I mean, the fact that we're able to do that and have a technology to where it brings back power, because basically, if there was a thesis for me for joining crypto, is bringing power back to the people, decentralizing, right? And, this is the way I kind of see it with, today's world. So for example, Netflix Or for example, Blockbuster. The only way you could see movies back then was driving to a place, doing that, or going to a movie theater. Now Netflix basically, and even though it's not necessarily decentralized, but Netflix is decentralizing movies, right? With a click of a button, you scroll down, it's direct to the movie, direct to the user, basically. And then what do we have with Amazon? Well, it used to be that you only had to go to retail stores. And now all of a sudden, Amazon figured out how to decentralize that stuff and basically create into a software, right? And you're able to purchase any item, anything that you have through this specific thing. So it always comes back to software, right? I mean, new software is being created, and same thing with, with the iPhone, right? The communications, it only used to be, right, you talk, face to face or something like that, and now it's software. And the same thing is happening with Bitcoin too, where now it's software, right? We have money. Who's to say that money cannot evolve? And money's evolving. And in the same way, the sharing of our data and being able to decentralize what's going on through THETA, I kind of see THETA playing along that kind of thesis that I have, to where it's decentralized and it's software that enables you to basically open up opportunities for the actual person, right? And so,
yeah, if you think about it, the software really is putting aside what it actually does and moving, in our case, video segments or other pieces of data between users. What it's really doing is setting down a set of rules of how we interact with each other. So, like if we're sharing, if we're both watching the same video stream, and say you get it first, and I want to pull a video segment from you. The way it works is I would make a very small, and this is behind the scenes, I wouldn't even know what's happening, but I'm making a very small micropayment of the tokens to you to pay for that video segment you just sent me. But the reality is what the software is basically just doing is, instead of me, in the crudest form, me calling you up and saying, hey, if you send me this video, I'll give you a little bit of money. It's just laying down the ground rules for our interactions, where if we're both on here, we've agreed that this is, you'll send video segments to me and I'll send you a small payment. And then you just blow that up into many thousands of users. It gets much more complicated. Who pulls what video segment, who pays who. And so the software is just a way of organizing all that and directing it into a network where we're all benefiting from it. Since it's far too complicated for us to do these, piecemeal. But yeah, it is just, it comes down to software that changes the way we organize in a way that, if it's done correctly, it's beneficial for everyone to organize in a new decentralized way.
Yeah, so you're talking about, sharing content and all that. So, and of course I have to bring my mom into this. She's the THETA, basically the THETA woman, right? That's what I, have to call her. I mean, she's all about it. Every day she tells me about it. There's news coming out, this and that. And so, I'm always receiving all this information from her. And so we're like, okay, we need to bring Wes Levitt. We need to talk to him. And then, and she talks to me and she tells me, well, you're going to be able to share bandwidth with each other through THETA, right? Bandwidth or something like that. I don't know how accurate. And again, I'm not tech savvy, so you might have already explained it in different words, but bandwidth, what is the importance of sharing bandwidth? Like, for example, are you saying that if I have THETA on my phone and you have THETA and my neighbors have THETA on our phone, we're both simultaneously and all of us simultaneously sharing bandwidth?
Yeah, well, you can think of it as basically like if you have spare capacity, which the vast majority of people do, at least now the way people use the internet, it's simplifying a bit, but the most data heavy thing is everyone watching video all day, all the time. Yeah. But you're almost always pulling that video because you're watching a site. You're not uploading a lot of video unless you happen to be a streamer, but there's just far fewer of them. Way more people watching content online and watching video all day. So the way it's structured, you typically have a certain amount of upload bandwidth to your ISP, or just in general, whatever connection you have, that's unused because it's just not as common to use that. That's basically unused capacity. And there's no reason why it's almost like a sunk cost to you if you have unused upload capacity and you're not using it. Right. And that's how we see THETA. It's basically a way to use a latent resources that's already sitting there unused. It's not totally unlike another sharing economy play, where if you had a house, a vacation house that you use once a week out of the year, why not rent it out on Airbnb? Because it's sitting unused, and you can monetize that and use it to give value to someone else. Same thing, if rather than 10 of us sitting in the same neighborhood, pulling the same stream and effectively paying for it 10 times, why not use some of that unused capacity to share it with your neighbors? They can pay you in this micropayment for THETA, but still at much lower cost than if all of us were just pulling the same stream redundantly.
Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. But essentially, what's the purpose? Yeah, I mean, I know you can monetize that, but what is the purpose of me being able to share that extra capacity? Like, what does that really do? Does that just, strengthen the network of THETA, or does that allow other people to stream or watch?
Yeah,
I'm not really understanding.
It probably best to explain it in terms of how we implemented on our site, THETA TV. When we first basically originally conceived of this network to solve our own problem, it's that we are the video platform that are that thousands of people are watching, and we're paying every time we send a stream to someone. So basically, whereas if our users will all just share this peer-to-peer amongst themselves, that takes a huge workload off us, and now we don't have to pay for half of our CDN costs. But of course, you're the end user; you're not going to do that for free. You expect to have some type of reason for contributing to this network, and that's why the THETA token compensates you basically for doing some of the work of the network. Whereas before us sitting at THETA TV, we'd be paying Akamai, AWS, Google Cloud X amount of dollars per month to deliver all this video to you and all the other users. Maybe now we pay half that, and the users are doing half the work. But to you as an end user, it didn't cost you anything really, just to be running this THETA software and in the background that doesn't take a lot of CPU. It didn't cost you anything, but you saved the platform money. Because of that, some of the value has to be carved off to give back to the user. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a model if we said, hey, everyone run this software to the benefit of the video platform and you get nothing. It needs, the way this is constructed this way, everyone benefits, because as a video platform, we save money. As a user, you get a cut of that. You're basically getting part of the money saved since you're contributing to the network.
Okay, got it. So I kind of see it like my comparison, at least from my understanding, it's kind of like the mining for Bitcoin, right? Everyone gets rewarded a little bit for participating in the network and strengthening, right? By using their computing power and energy to get in the network. So that's kind of how I see it. So there's an incentive, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good analogy. It's you can think of it as kind of a more useful form of mining, because the work you're doing is actually helping someone else instead of just solving math problems to race to a next block. But similar concept in that you're taking your computing resources and turning it into a return for that.
Huh. And so, maybe we should have brought my mom into this thing. She would have had better questions than I could, but she was asking, how, like, does this compete with AT&T Spectrum, or like, what does this kind of compete with? Because it's basically taking a market share out of some of these companies that have centralized, like you said, you have these central tunnels that normally go through a particular company or source. Who does THETA kind of compete with, or what kind of market share is it pulling from companies?
Yeah, so the most direct competitor you'd probably say is these content delivery networks, Akamai being the biggest, but the big cloud services have their own offerings as well. It competes in the sense that if more video is offloaded on THETA network, then per user, there's less for these CDN networks to move this same data. That said, what we found is the most efficient way for content to be delivered is a hybrid between the existing CDN and a peer-to-peer network. Because if it's solely peer-to-peer, it's not always a good user experience. What if I'm pulling for you and you buffer, or you drop off and my stream buffers? That's kind of unacceptable in 2021. You really expect your stream to be clean. It's not 1999. So, like the model we use and what we think is most effective is basically you try to first pull from the THETA peer-to-peer network. in a matter of something like 100 milliseconds. If you don't have that video segment I need, it just goes back to the centralized CDN and pulls it from there instead, and then hops back to THETA as soon as it's able to. So basically, you go the more efficient way with THETA when you can, but if not, the downside is not your stream drops off. The downside is you go back to your regular CDN. So in that sense, we think CDNs have their place. We just don't think it's the only solution that should be out there. We think that by adding a peer-to-peer way to deliver data, it's making the whole system better for everyone. So I guess the short answer is we're not trying to kill Akamai, but it will take some of their, at least some of their share of delivering video if it's more efficient to do so on THETA.
And it's kind of like the thing, for example, no one can get rid of Bitcoin, for example. And, we're seeing that financial institutions and the entire world is adapting. They're adapting. So they're trying to get a hold of Bitcoin one way or another. And it's going to be the same thing with THETA, right? These companies are going to have to adapt and in a way, maybe even participate with the network. I don't know how that's possible, or I don't know. And it's similar to what we're seeing with these companies, right? They realize, wait a minute, maybe the way that we're doing things, I mean, we got a competitor that's actually solving a lot of solutions. What if we can partner with these people? And so to me, that's kind of how I'm seeing this with you guys.
That's right. Some of the companies in the telecoms that we discussed with, they have CDN businesses of their own. But they're still interested in using THETA, and I think it's the calculus is what you said, that they're realizing that they can't fight new technology that's, especially if it's delivering more value to the end users. You can't put the genie back in the bottle and say, well, you're just not allowed to have that. If it helps end users, then they're going to get their hands on it, whether they like it or not. So the more the more appropriate way to go about that for them then is to understand how this technology is beneficial and potentially fold it into what they're doing already, not try to kill it. In the same way that, banks can't kill crypto or Bitcoin. They can try to fight it, but it's really a losing battle because, you and I are still going to be able to get Bitcoin whether a bank likes it or not. It's better to understand why it's giving value to people and try to go along with that.
And I talked to Hans Koenig, who is a chair of the Digibyte Foundation, and, we're kind of having this discussion, and we're like, to me, it almost seems too good to be true, because we're to the point to where, we've been in a world where everything is centralized. Information is centralized. You have big companies that just use your data. They monetize your data, basically. And so, and again, we have, central money, right? From a central bank, money is controlled from a central point, everything. And now all of a sudden we have an entire new industry that is coming with decentralized streaming, decentralized sharing of, your bandwidth and your storage and your capacity that you have, decentralized transfer of money. And so to me, it seems too good to be true. And, how come we're not seeing a lot of friction from either governments, like, I don't know, or at least, do you foresee some friction happening? Maybe not now, because, maybe the reason why I think it's too good to be true is because we're still so early in this game. Like, you don't see a lot of people just pounding down on crypto or, any of this. How do you foresee that coming?
Yeah, it's a really complicated question. And I think also because we're kind of in the middle of it, we're watching it happen before our eyes. Crypto in general, it feels like we've gotten past the point where it can just be stamped out entirely. So I don't know if it's, and I guess I'm going to take a U.S. focus since the answer could be different in different countries. But in the U.S., it feels like at least enough progress has been made by lobbying efforts from the industry and also just thought leadership from sort of the respected tech leaders in the country, that it doesn't feel like the government is going to simply try to ban it entirely. There's too many very successful, intelligent, and thoughtful folks that are invested and they're advocating for this technology. If it was only a few unknown people on the internet, it was a lot like, 6-7 years ago, it was a lot more likely that you would just have a blanket ban. When Andreessen Horowitz is raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have pension funds that are looking to invest, Ivy League endowments that are buying crypto for their permanent endowments for the universities, it's too integrated now for, I think, for the government to just look at an outright ban of these things. And I don't think they want to, if they see that this is genuinely something that people see value in. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see, but I don't think, generally speaking, the U.S. government is so much a crude instrument that they're just going to say, well, a lot of influential people think this is a value, and institutions think it as a value, but let's just ban it. I don't think it's going to work that way. But we'll see as it grows. To your point, it's still kind of in that stage where, to the existing players, maybe it's not dangerous enough yet.
Yeah.
If you see, en masse, a lot of people are pulling their money out of the banks, and banks are failing because they're all buying Bitcoin. I don't know. Things could get a little hairier.
I mean, that's essentially what I've done, right? I mean, all my cash is, now in crypto. So, I think it's going to be a hard wake-up call for a lot of centralized companies and banks and, all of this, because they're going to realize, but see, and I like what you're saying about, is it CDN? Is that what you're saying? Is that the term?
Yeah, content delivery network.
So content delivery network, you're talking about doing it hybrid, right? So to me, the way I see crypto, Theta, Bitcoin is, this is going to be an alternative, guys. This is not going to be a thing that just eradicates the current financial system or eradicates the current CDN. It's an alternative that brings power to the people. You want to use it, go ahead. You want to go through a centralized location, CDN, go ahead. And that's kind of how I see this.
Yeah, and that's the approach we take as well, or the mindset we have as well. And if the net result is that all we do is pull the centralized existing entities in a way that's more beneficial to the end user, then we've accomplished part of the goal we try to in the first place. Like whether it's THETA or in the case of Bitcoin, if it forces financial institutions to be more user focused and allow them to have more control over their own finances because they have Bitcoin as an alternative, then even if less than half of the country ever owns Bitcoin, or less than 10%, the fact that that alternative exists may force the centralized institutions to become more like the decentralized crypto alternative, and that's a win in and of itself.
I mean, it's huge, but okay. So, last couple questions. I don't want to keep you here forever. So what are your thoughts? So how do you foresee THETA? How do you foresee THETA in the future? 10 years from now, 5 years from now, what is THETA? What has it accomplished?
Yeah, cool. 10 years, that's a long time. But I guess, in the indeterminate future, I see it as, kind of like we talked about, where we're abstracting away the specifics of what THETA doing. It's software that helps devices interact with each other with content and data, and allows value to be transacted with that as well. And so while it seems like we're a very specific use case, we're doing it in video delivery. We're launching, we already have launched NFTs in limited form on THETA, and now have a NFT marketplace that's in the works, coming soon. And that really is the same way as well, where it's different ways for value to be transacted between individual users. And I think when you abstract that away and look at it in the long term, in 5-10 years, it's just any way that a company wants all their end users to interact with each other and send video to each other, or collaborate on data, or transact value in the form of tokens or NFTs, anything like that. Again, just software that sets up the rules that define how we interact with each other.
Do you see millions of users using THETA? I mean, if we're talking about Samsung and possibly them integrating at some point, I mean, is that something that you could foresee? I mean, reasonably.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of the classical networks, where it grows in value as you add more users to it.
It's a network effect, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in the same way that Bitcoin becomes more valuable as more people use it, and therefore more likely that it will succeed. It's the same thing as our edge nodes on our network. We're a few thousand in November, and then grew to 10,000 in Q1 and now are close to 20,000. It's also becoming more valuable as a network as it grows more, which makes it more likely that more people will join. In the case of, we're talking about devices sharing bandwidth, I mean, that is literally a number of devices in the billions right now. So of course, if it continues to add value and people see the value in sharing their resources on it, yeah, it could be any number of those devices.
Got it. So what's your thought? What's your thought on the economy? Leaving all this crypto aside and theta and all this. So we got about 40% of all US dollars have been printed in a matter of a year and a half in the entire existence of the United States. Does that bring concern to you? Is that like normal? We're gonna be okay. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not normal, that's for sure. But it doesn't inherently mean that you'll see hyperinflation and rampant inflation, because Japan started printing money in the early 90s after their late 80s, early 90s crash. And they've been printing for 30 years. They invented QE long before it was used in the US, or at least 5 years before it was used in the US. So printing money doesn't automatically mean inflation. Japan's still struggling with the lack of inflation, and they have for decades, no matter how much money they print. But I do worry that because that's true in that specific case where you have deflationary factors like an aging population, and just technology emerging over the last 30 years being deflationary, I do fear that some people have kind of took the lesson away from that just because there was no inflation there, that means we can print as much money as we want, no matter what, and there will never be inflation. That's just as crazy. And especially if, you have the right combination of things like the economy roaring back after COVID, where everyone's excited to spend a lot of money, and then $1.9 trillion in fiscal stimulus on top of all the money printing, the monetary stimulus. It could easily be that's the set of factors you need to all of a sudden you have crazy inflation in the US, back like it's the late 70s again. I don't know. There's obviously a lot of very intelligent economists on both sides of it, but it's a little scary when people have this attitude that, we got away with printing this much, so we can just keep printing it and it'll never filter out to the real economy. So let's just keep the printer on. That's a dangerous attitude.
I mean, and the thing is there actually is inflation. Yeah, I mean, my eggs and Meyer over there are obviously not increasing in price tremendously, right? Food or all that. But if you look at assets, though, if you look at real estate, I mean, my goodness, my fiance and I actually just got declined on an offer. We offered about 25% over the listing price, or some outrageous amount in this market, got declined. And so we're seeing the price of real estate increase tremendously. The price of equities increase tremendously, Bitcoin, commodities. And so there actually is inflation. And really, what the government is doing is they're saving the stock market at the expense of the little guy, at the expense of the US dollar, because the bottom 50% don't own all of these assets. I mean, are you kidding me? So that's kind of why it infuriates me. That's kind of why I'm in crypto. But, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the economy.
Yeah, that's definitely true, too. I mean, we say there's very low inflation, under 2%, because we define inflation so narrowly that, we ignore the asset price bubbles, which are all over the place. And I don't think it's crypto. That's the only reason that crypto is going up. But it certainly is a tailwind for it when there's that much money slushing around. And then the CPI rate in the US, they exclude, I think, food and energy because the prices are too volatile, which I get the argument, but you keep chipping away at things in the inflation definition, and pretty soon it's just, did the price of TVs go up? No, they went down. Okay, there's no inflation. that's not the real one. When you see people out there saying, I can't afford to buy a house and my kid's university tuition has doubled compared to what it was 10 years ago. And you can sit there and say inflation's not a concern.
No, it's a joke. But okay, anyway, last questions here. So I'm going to say, a specific phrase or something. You got to respond with one word, the first word that comes into your mind. Okay, that's it. Right. One word. All right, try to keep the one word. Let's start with Bitcoin.
I want to say store value, but money is the first word that popped into my head. So let's say money.
Okay. Yeah. Stock market.
Overvalued.
I get that a lot. Let's see. Theta.
Decentralized.
Got it. Ethereum?
First for the possible. Vitalik. I still think they need to. I can't disengage Ethereum from Vitalik, which may be a problem for that. It's got to move beyond.
Yeah, that. Yeah, true. All right. Peter Schiff. Are you aware of Peter Schiff?
The gold bug.
Yeah. So what's one word? I mean, yeah, gold bug, but
obsessed. I saw a stat the other day that he actually, if you check out his tweets for the last 2 years, he's tweeted the word Bitcoin significantly more than he's tweeted the word gold, which means
that's amazing.
He thinks Bitcoin's full of shit, but man, this guy can't stop talking about it.
Yeah, I know. I think my word would be denial. I think the guy's just in denial, man. He lost in a big chance and he can't get back in, and so whatever. But
you can't get over it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be a copycat of Anthony Pompliano. I'm gonna ask you those last two questions. So, do you believe in aliens?
Yeah, statistically. I mean, I don't necessarily believe in I know they're out there, but you see the number of galaxies out there beyond our own, and you figure there's got to probably be something out there.
I know, and I'm a Star Wars fan, as you can see. I got a lightsaber there.
Yeah.
There's got to be aliens. Someone's out there. The Force exists. But what about favorite book? Has there been any book that has changed your life, or maybe a podcast you've listened, something that changed your mind completely? A book? Do you have anything?
Yeah, a book. Let's see. I'm trying to think something. I did read an old Star Trek book called, I wouldn't say changed my life, but the last one I can remember that's notable is Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. And it's a famous book about equities trading in the 1910s, 1920s, where it was basically the Wild West before the SEC existed. And it's a very interesting read for anyone involved in crypto on the trading exchange side, because there's so many parallels, and basically read the book and all the scams and the shady practices that happened in exchanges in 1920s in equities. They're all just being done 100 years later by crypto exchanges. Things like lies for pump and dump schemes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
None of it's new. They were doing this all the time before they regulated the stock markets too. And I'm not saying that necessarily means the SEC needs to regulate everything in crypto, but just as a consumer, it was a good eye opener to watch for all the scammy, shady things going on on that side of crypto.
I might have to give it a read. I've heard of that. So are you what are you? Are you a rock star or something? What do you got going on in the back? You got guitars?
I wouldn't say rock star, but yeah, the bedroom warrior type maybe. Yeah, it started out just as an easier way to store guitars in my apartment that just hang them on the wall instead. But it just happens to be where my office desk is set up. So now that we're on Zoom all day since COVID started, it's a nice backdrop as well.
Man, I wish I had talents. I can't play an instrument to save my life, but that's cool, man.
Never too late to start.
All right. Yeah. All right, Wes. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We'll talk another day, and maybe as some announcements or something cool happens with THETA. And hey, maybe I'll bring my mom next time. She'll be sitting next to me and asking you actually good questions, because man, I don't know. I'm just not a very tech savvy guy, and
all good. Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, we obviously always have more in the works, and after we have a lot more interesting things to talk about, happy to come back and share.
Let's do it. Sounds good, Wes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos.